Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Deal Scout. Josh here, having a conversation with Mr. Charles in Texas. Charles, welcome to the show.
Josh, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I get from looking at your LinkedIn, holding up a book called the Payroll Book. I have a feeling we're going to talk a little bit about payroll and deals. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about it.
All right, Charles. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what are you up to?
Well, I'm a Midwestern boy. I grew up in Iowa. Graduated from high school earlier, 16, worked for a while, wasn't ready for college, joined the United States Marine Corps. Spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, was trained as a computer programmer, systems engineer, spent a combat tour in Vietnam, came back, met my wife in Kansas City where I was stationed, married her. She had 5 kids when I married her. I claim insanity. But we were married for 45 years before she passed, so it worked. It was a good marriage. Wasn't perfect, but it was a good marriage. So enjoyed that. Got out of the military, found that business did not value my military experience, even though I was a computer expert at the time. So I went to college and got my credentials, my BBA, my MBA, sat for and passed my CPA exam while I was still in graduate school. Went to work for Texas Instruments. Spent 15 years in the corporate world, large corporations, small corporations, turnarounds, other things. Realized I was never going to run a major corporation. I didn't have the political skills. I was unwilling to stab people in the back and toss them off the ladder. So if I was going to run a business, as my father had, I grew up in a family business, I was going to have to start my own. So 30 years ago, my wife Ruth and I started our own business. And here we are, or here I am.
Well, a few things. Terribly sorry about your wife's passing. That's my heart and prayers go to you guys. And then second, thank you for your military service. You served around the same time my dad served. My dad was in the Army. You were in the Marines, so you guys probably had friendly debates. But I appreciate your service, and if nothing else from this, I just want you to know that I appreciate your service there. Now, how does a computer guy going into Vietnam or the military wind up in combat? How did that happen?
Well, in Vietnam at Red Beach, there is a computer installation. So I got transferred there from Okinawa because I'd requested transfer to Vietnam. I was young and dumb. And so I went to the CO and said, hey, I want to go to a combat unit. So they had to assign so many people to the local infantry company that did interdiction and ambushes around Red Beach. So I got assigned over there because I was a nuisance. And so I spent most of that 6 months in limited combat, running interdiction to try and catch the Viet Cong and setting up ambushes out in the field and so on and so forth. And it was a great experience. Yeah. One I wouldn't go through again, but Vietnam is a beautiful country. And one of the most peaceful moments of my life. It was close to sunset. We'd left Namo, which was a village north of Red Beach, heading out to set up an ambush on one of the islands out in the rice paddies. The daytime bugs were pretty much settled down. The nighttime bugs weren't out yet. The sun was setting. The purple mountains up to the north of us, north of the Namo River, just were stair-stepped into the purple. And the Buddhist gong in the village behind us began to ring. So you have this deep, sonorous reverberation across the rice paddies, sunset, just incredibly peaceful, just a wonderful memory in the midst of combat. So,
peace in the middle of combat. Isn't that cool?
It was.
Now, during that time era, right? I think you were there late 60s, 66-ish. Is that right?
9.
Okay. What was your favorite song during that time? Great music came from that time, the Vietnam era.
We got to get out of this place.
We got to get out of this place.
There's a better life for you and me.
Yeah. So cool. So you came back, right? So this happened to my dad. Let me know your experience. You went over there, a war hero, came back because of what was going on in Vietnam in the United States. some people didn't come back perceived as heroes. Actually, it was a challenge to come back to to the US. What was your experience coming back over to the States?
I landed on the 14th of October. The 15th of October, 1969 was the big moratorium day against the war with all kinds of demonstrations. Well, my girlfriend was at the University of California, Davis. So I put on my dress greens, my ribbons and badges, and I went to see her. Now, you've been on a college campus, sidewalks are 12 feet wide because when classes change, all kinds of people. Well, I'm walking from the parking lot over to the administration building so I can find where she's at. Classes change. Everybody comes rushing out. The sidewalks fill up. I'm walking right down the middle of it because I've heard tales. And the first SOB that spits on my uniform, I'm going to tear off their head and do something down their neck. As I'm walking down that sidewalk, the crowd just parted in front of me. Everybody just got off the sidewalk. And I walked unimpeded to the administration building. Nobody would get within 10 feet of me. I think they realized what my attitude was.
That is not a guy we want to F with, right? Like,
here I am 5 days out of combat. Okay. And combat requires an entirely different set of responses and reflexes that you can't use in the real world, but it takes time to relearn. So, and they didn't have re-education type seminars, webinars, courses, whatever, indoctrination to get you back. They just said, hey, you're free, go. So that was my experience on the 15th of October, 1969.
So you don't, as I'm looking at you right now, so people are just listening in, but you're an older gentleman, distinguished, you got a nice sports coat on, glasses, but you have no hair. Now, back in the 70s, did you rock out long hair or an afro?
Never did long hair. And when I got to college, I found, well, after I got back to the States, I found that there were more women that liked men with short hair than there were men with short hair. So I kept mine short even after I got out of the military.
Awesome. All right. So you found that businesses at the time didn't have a strong, what did you say? They didn't value military experience at that time, right? So you went back and you got your degrees. You went back, got some education, then you landed a job in Texas Instruments, and you were there for a while. But you found that you didn't quite fit into the big corporate world, climbing up ladders, pushing people off ladders, and doing all that kind of stuff, right? So talk to us a bit about the day you left corporate America to start your own business.
It was a great day. It was something I'd look forward to. I grew up in a family business. My parents worked together all my life. I thought it was a natural thing to work with your spouse. Ruth and I started the business together, and I found out it's an unnatural act. But we overcame that. But it was a wonderful thing to have my own business and have my own destiny in my own hands, and not to have my income and my livelihood at somebody else's whim.
Mm-hmm.
You're fired. I've had it happen to me. I hate that. Everything goes, what am I going to do now? How am I going to provide for myself and my family? Where's my future going? What am I going to do? All that is it's just crazy if you're working for somebody else.
Yeah.
And so to me, it was a wondrous thing not to have to work for somebody else. Now, it doesn't mean life's simple. I worked harder for myself than I ever did for anybody else, okay? But it was for me, it was for my family, it was for my future. It wasn't for some investor someplace to make millions of dollars in dividends off my hard work.
Yeah. They say an entrepreneur is someone who will work from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. to get rid of a 9 to 5 job, right? They're the kind of people that will do that.
Too many of us do that and don't learn to work on our business instead of in it. And we've just traded a 40-hour-a-week job for an 80-hour-a-week job, and probably make less money. But
yeah. So what kind of business did you and Ruth get into?
Well, it was a Financial Express. It was a mobile accounting service. We bought a franchise. I'd been COO for the franchisor, and the board wanted to get rid of the original office, so they weren't spending time on it. So I bought that, and a year later, the franchisor went belly up. So we just changed the name and kept on going. After a few years, we dropped the mobile aspect as technology improved. And then here about 10 years ago, I sold off the accounting to my partner, who I brought in over the years. So that left the payroll, and I've been doing payroll ever since.
Yeah. What was it like exiting, something that you built? Because you built this with your wife and you're working hard at it. You changed it from franchise to what you guys built, from mobile to software induced. Like, what was it like selling?
We haven't sold.
Oh,
It's available, but nobody's offered the right price yet.
oh, gotcha.
So we're still going on. We're still growing, getting in new clients on a regular basis, marketing our services, improving our software. We've changed software a few times. We're thinking of developing our own at some point, but that's going to cost about $2 million. A friend of mine has just done his own payroll software for their security business and to sell it to other security businesses. And I told him up front it'd be $2 million. He laughed at me. It's just over 2 million so far.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets expensive to build stuff.
It does.
All right. So here you are you wrote a book on payroll and you're doing payroll for a company. Now, why did you choose that as your specific, focus for your life's work?
Well, I started out with the business. I wanted to get into business. It was available. It was something that I was qualified for, professionally, competent. The payroll aspect I like, and I've stuck with it. I enjoy dealing with the IRS. I know that sounds strange.
Yeah, you're crazy.
No, it's a game.
Yeah.
I tell my clients, don't talk to the IRS because you'll get upset. I know the rules. I know the people. I've been on the IRS Advisory Council, so I've met I've had lunch with the commissioner several times, the deputy commissioners, the commissioners, the various business areas. A lot of people up there I know. And so I can do a lot of things in compliance that my competitors can't. So it's fun. It's kind of like playing high stakes poker with somebody else's money. And I tell my clients not to talk to the IRS because they'll get upset. Well, here a few months ago, the IRS screwed up on my taxes. So I called the revenue officer, and he was a doofus. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know the law. He didn't know the regulations. He didn't know the IRS manual that I know. Okay. And I find myself literally yelling at him over the phone. And in the back of my mind, it's going, Charles, don't do that. Don't do that. It doesn't do you any good. And so, I wanted his boss and everything else. And of course, I pissed him off, so he did more stupid things. And I finally got a hold of his boss about 3 weeks later, COVID. And we straightened everything out, and he was properly chastised for screwing up and so on. But when it gets personal, it can be very devastating. So I enjoy dealing with it for my clients because the IRS makes millions of mistakes every year. And there's a lot of things, and the IRS cannot penalize you for a simple mistake. They do, but they're not allowed to under the law. So if you don't know how to fight them, my analogy is relatively simple. When I grew up, Pele was the world's best soccer player. Wonderful athlete, still alive. Maybe the best soccer player of all time. But if you put him in a New York Yankees uniform at second base, he'd be lost.
Yeah.
So if I've got a dog groomer, a manufacturer, a chef, a mechanic, and they get into trouble with the IRS, they're like Pele at second base in Yankee Stadium. They're lost. They may be wonderful at what they do, and they're good at it, or they'd be out of business. But asking them to learn a whole nother panoply of laws and regulations and rules just is unreasonable. That's what we do. We're the specialists.
That's pretty cool. All right. So before we hit record, we were talking about, deals and acquisitions and such like that. And you're like, oh man, we got to talk about payroll and acquisitions. All right. So paint the picture, tell us what happened. And maybe for our fellow private equity people or business investors, like what could go wrong when payroll happens?
We had a large nonprofit buy a doctor's practice. that were with a competitor for payroll. Well, after the date of acquisition, the doctor had them do an additional payroll and file the reports for it and deposit the taxes. Well, we reported it for the big NGO, the big nonprofit, as well. Then a few months later, the doctor had a bonus that he still owed his employees, so he had the competitor run that. And of course, he didn't provide that data to the acquirer. He just did it. So there were refunds, there were unpaid taxes. We are currently, 2 years later, we are filing W-2 corrections, 941 corrections, 940 corrections, TWC corrections, state unemployment corrections, because he didn't tell the acquiring company that he was still doing payroll with a competitor. And then he gave them their account to draw, to pay the taxes into. It's a nightmare. I've probably spent 5 hours of my time and probably 20 hours of my staff's time, and we're still not done.
Oh, geez.
And it will take another year to work out. And in the meantime, my client got hit with penalty notices that show up. And so it affects his funding because all of a sudden it shows that they haven't paid their taxes. So when they're seeking funding, somebody looks at them and says, excuse me, you owe taxes you haven't paid. We're not going to fund you.
That's crazy.
It's a disaster.
So what do you think it's going to wind up costing this group that you're working with, the nonprofit or the other group?
Well, it's cost them some funding already, and it's going to cost them several $1,000s in fees, and they paid some penalties just to get them off the books, probably $5,000 they didn't need to. And one of the problems in paying a fine with the IRS that you really don't know is it's almost impossible to get back. Mm. As long as you owe money, the IRS is interested in talking to you. If you don't owe money, it's nobody's problem with the IRS. There's nobody that cares.
Yeah,
that's the problem. One of the problems of the service. Once they think you don't owe money, they don't care about you.
So let me ask you a question, right? So, and we'll talk about payroll and we'll talk about your business, but give us some tips, right, of how to deal with the IRS. Let's just say there's a disagreement. So obviously you say don't handle your own stuff. Even you found that you want to yell at them. What give us some tips and tricks on dealing with the IRS.
Answer every letter. I don't care if you get the same letter a week later that you've already answered. Send them a copy of what you sent them. Never ignore any communication from the IRS. Never. Follow up on everything. Follow up, follow up, follow up. Next, use an outside expert. Use somebody that understands these, because the particular language of the notices, of the penalties, and so on is very particular. It's a different language. It's one I've learned over the years. And I have the resources. I know where to go with the IRS and see exactly what this means. I can pull up the transcript and look at what the codes are and the dates and understand what they've done and done wrong. So answer everything. When you're doing up, if you do your own payroll and taxes, make sure all the numbers are correct. Everything adds up, everything multiplies out, everything ties, everything's filed on time, everything is deposited on time. Those are the errors that get most of the penalties, is simple things that people ignore, which is why I believe in outsourcing payroll, because we don't ignore them. Right. We have systems in place to make sure it happens. Entrepreneurs tend not to.
Okay. So when dealing with the IRS, right? So like I've had to call in the IRS before, and you dial the numbers and you sit there for 45 minutes and then you get I'm sorry, you'll have to call back on the next business day. Click. Like
courtesy disconnect.
What's that?
Courtesy disconnect.
Yeah, which drives me free. I just waited 45 minutes. So what are some tips and tricks on how to actually get on the phone with someone or to work through getting to someone's boss or something? What did you do there?
Okay. Normally, most of the work is done by correspondence. So follow up on that. There are some things you can do. If it gets too critical, you can file a form 12153, which is a due process hearing, which will get you a hearing and get you somebody specific to call. Once you get to that point, you'll get a revenue agent that's assigned the case, and they'll send you a letter with their name and their phone number. That's when you can contact a specific person. Now, if you're dealing with an examination and you're dealing with the first level agent, you can always ask for their supervisor. They must send you to their supervisor. They don't have a choice. So if you say to them, Mr. Smith, I want to speak to your supervisor. If they say no, you just laugh at them and say, I'm sorry, I need to speak to him. If the IRS gets too obstreperous, you can always call your congressman because he has influence with the IRS. Chuck Reddick, who's the commissioner, will take the phone call from the congressional office and, well, his assistant will, and something will happen. It's a final step if it gets too strange, but ask for their supervisor. There's a whole series of appeals. Dealing with the IRS is a whole series of no's followed by a single yes. We had one penalty for a client that they'd screwed up on their W-2s. Long story, but there was a $95,000 penalty.
Holy moly.
Well, it started out at 70, it grew to 95,000. And I talked to the examiner, their boss, the appeals officer, the appeals officer's boss, the director of field operations. And I went to his boss, who handles part of the country, but he wouldn't return my calls. So I called the deputy chief of appeals and said, hey, Shelley, I can't get this guy to return my calls. She said, I'll have him call you. He called me that afternoon. We talked about the situation. He got it assigned to another appeals office. They looked at the whole thing. And 3 months later, my client got a $400 refund instead of a $95,000 penalty. Never give up. Always keep appealing. You only need one person, one time to go, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And you win. And when they say that, say thank you very much and get the hell out of there. Don't keep talking.
Right. Shut your freaking mouth and get out. Take your yes and go.
It's like a salesman. You get the signature, say thank you and leave. Don't keep selling.
That's right. Exactly. So Charles, the things that you're working on now, talk to us about an ideal deal for you. Like you're in the payroll service. How many clients are you working on, and what's an ideal deal look like for you?
We deal with smaller businesses, 250 and under for the most part, 250 employees. The best deal is someone who's unhappy with what they're doing, wants better service, better compliance, calls us and says, we want to start at the first of the year, which is the easiest time to switch payroll services. We've got a list of clients already that are starting new clients that are starting the first of the year. So US business has payroll, wants better service, better pricing, more compliance. These are people we want to talk to. And we do onesies. If your lawyer has, himself or one girl in the office and he screwed up on his payroll and has got a penalty, have him call me.
All right. So I spend a lot of time on the Deal Scout, looking and talking to like startups, right? Do you deal with, by the way, across the US or just in Dallas or just in Texas?
The whole US.
Okay.
We're one of the smaller national firms. Yes.
Got it. So when someone goes from, I'm a solopreneur to maybe I have some 1099 contractors to I'm ready to hire my first employee. What kind of advice do you have for that person? What kind of, things that should they think through? And let's just say they're in Florida where,
The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups.
Okay.
This is 30 years experience distilled down to 95,000 words. It'll tell him everything he needs to know because you need to know what your entity is. You need to know what your state is. You need to know what your responsibilities are, what you have to do, what you have to withhold, who you have to pay, who's an employee, who's not an employee, what's a statutory employee, what's a non-statutory employee, how to handle a penalty, how to handle deposits, what to file, when to file, where to file, who to file with, your state, your local, you may have local taxes. It's a whole bunch of things. I don't make my own clothes. I don't mow my own lawn. I don't build my own car. I don't build my own house. I don't slaughter my own steers or pigs. I outsource all that. Payroll is one of those things that it just makes sense to call an expert and say, hey, Charles, I'm going to hire somebody. Can you handle it for me? More than happy to. It's
And
just
all you
not
guys
worth doing yourself.
got it. So all you guys do is focus. I mean, you wrote the book on payroll. All you guys do is focus on payroll.
Payroll, HR, and associated things. We can help our clients with benefits, HR, handbooks, all those things are associated. Some of that's in the book.
Okay.
As cheat is where if you have a check that doesn't cash, you don't get to keep the money. You have to send it to the state. One of my major clients, one day we were talking, and I brought up this cheat, and she said, what? And I said, well, all these refund checks you send to clients, the insurance refunds where they're overpaid and so on, you don't get to keep that money. And she said, what? And I said, no, that has to go to the state of Texas. She said, what?
Oh, no.
So we got with her lawyer, and they made a deal with the state of Texas that they do the last 3 years, and the state of Texas would ignore the previous 25.
Got it.
These are the things you have to know, and you don't know what you don't know. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
All the time.
So for investment groups, right? Private equity, VC, groups that are investing in startups and they go from, rapid growth, right? What are some things that as an investor, what are some things that I should look at, that we should look at that, could get us into either a lot of trouble or ding us financially big time?
One of the big things is classification. A lot of startups say, well, I'll just pay them. Oh, okay, fine. I'll make them independent contractors. You don't get to make that choice. There's a whole body of law that changes quite regularly on defining who's an independent contractor and who's an employee. You don't get to choose. They don't get to choose. They don't get to say, y'all just pay me as a 1099er. That's not their choice. It's the law. And if you don't pay them correctly, the IRS is going to come in at some point in time and say, all the taxes you should have withheld and all the taxes you should have paid as an employer, you need to write us a check for that, plus penalties, plus interest. And you need to do it today. And I've seen companies go out of business over that because they build up a huge, because, okay, you pay the money to the independent contractors, well, the IRS wants it. Well, you can get it back from the independent contractor. Yeah, right. You're going to go sue them all to try and get that money back. And even then, you haven't paid your share of the taxes that you now owe, plus state unemployment, plus federal unemployment, plus penalties, plus interest. If you don't classify your people right to start with, and 70% of businesses don't classify correctly according to the Labor Department, you're going to get into trouble. That's one of the big things startups do wrong, is classifying workers properly.
Wow. Got it. So as you're going through this business, like, what does the future look like for you, Charles?
Well, a lot of fun. We're having a great time. We're growing. We're getting bigger all the time. We're getting more employees, more clients, more business. We love it. It's fun. My staff says to me, Charles, when are you going to retire? I'm 72 now. And I say, one of these days you're going to come in and find me dead at my desk.
Oh, geez.
I retired.
Many, many, many moons from now.
Well,
Charles.
I work out 3 times a week. My doctors say I'm in great shape. My blood pressure this morning was 121/66 with a 50 pulse rate. Yeah, I should be around for a long time.
Do you drink coffee?
I drink coffee, but I quit alcohol.
Oh, no kidding. How do you like your coffee? So if you and I are, okay. Yeah, me too. Got it. So if we're out having a cup of coffee, all right, you drink yours black, me too, right? So we're having a cup of coffee and I ask you, we're having a great chat and I ask you, what's a good book besides your own? You cannot recommend your own book because you already, gave me a free copy, right? And I go, what's a good book that I should read? It could be personal or business.
Okay, you're a small business?
Sure.
Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited.
The E-Myth Revisited.
It teaches you how to work on your business, not in your business. A friend of mine gave that to me 20 years ago. It saved my business.
Yeah.
Because I was working in my business and not on it.
Yeah.
And it taught me how to work on my business and make my business successful as well as myself. I buy it by the dozen and I give it out to lots of people because I think it's extraordinarily valuable.
Yeah. He wrote an incredible book. You have the visionary, the manager, and the technician, the three different personas in the workforce. Which one are you? Like in those, which one do you best fit into?
I'm a visionary.
Yeah.
I'd like to be a manager, but I'm a visionary. My wife and I had worked together for many years, and she described it. I was the balloon that pulled her up into the air to allow her to see visions she'd never imagined. Mm. And she was the anchor that kept me from flying away. Mm. So that made it work for us. So yeah, I see all these things that are possible, and I want them to be so. Yeah,
you're so cool, man. So Charles, what is your favorite thing about working with these clients? Because you've been you're 72 years old. You got wisdom. You got some gray hairs. You've got some great experience. You've been in combat. You've been in love. You've had a family. You've built business. You've built some incredible business. Worked at big companies, right? You've seen a lot. What's your favorite part about the business? And then I want some wisdom from you too.
I like helping them. I like solving problems. I'm a problem solver by nature. So when I can get them out of hot water with the IRS, when I can push the IRS off in the corner and say, stay. These are the kind of things that I like to do. It's something I'm good at. I'm good at solving problems. I'm good at dealing with the IRS. I'm good at fixing things. So when I can do this for my clients, I get a kick out of that. Wisdom. Well, first of all, you made one mistake. I've got no gray hair.
It looks like there's some on the side, or that might be the reflection.
And it's white now. But I enjoy working with my clients. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun solving the problems. The wisdom that you think you see with me, it's empirical. I've made all these mistakes over the years, and I've learned from them. And I guess that may be wisdom, but to me, it's experience. I've screwed up and I've made mistakes, and I remember them. My staff comes to me, my marketing staff sometimes say, well, why don't we try this? And I say, well, yeah, I'm sure we can try it, but this is what happened the last time we tried it. So, things may be different. So do a limited trial, but watch out.
Yeah. All right. So we're finishing up our cup of coffee, and I'm getting ready to go to work or to be with my family. You put your arm around my shoulder and you say, young man, this is one piece of advice, right? This is the one piece of advice that I'm going to give to you before you leave. It could be business, personal, anything. You grab me and you tell me what we say.
Absolutely. I stole this one from Bill Gates. People will overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, guys.
Awesome, man. So Charles, for companies, 250 employees and under, looking to get some help and support with IRS, with payroll, with benefits, what's a good place for them to connect with you and do a deal with you?
The payroll, the website is GetPayroll, GET Payroll, GetPayroll. My email is cjr@getpayroll. And if they're in a hurry, 972-353-0000.
Very good. What question should I have asked you in this conversation that I screwed up and I didn't ask?
I think you did a very good job, Josh. I think we covered a lot of things. So You did good work.
Thank you, sir. You did good too. And once again, for you of all of our other service members, frontline workers, I stand, salute you. Our team stands and salute you. We honor you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your dedication to protect and serve us here in the U.S. We love you. Fellow deal makers, as you're listening in, if you need help with payroll, if you'd like to have a conversation with Charles and the team and what they're doing, head on over to getpayroll.com. I think he has an offer. If you mention the Deal Scout, you get a copy of his free book. He'll send it out to you. But reach out to him regardless and say, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for your service, and find a way to do a deal together. That's the purpose of the show. And if you want to work on a deal or looking for a deal and want to talk about it on the show, head on over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, maybe get you on the show next. So then, talk to you all on the next episode. See you, everybody.